Hello, ALF listeners. It is time to wet a line again on the Australian Lure Fishing Podcast. Well, let's face it, when isn't it time to wet a line on the Australian Lure Fishing Podcast? But today, we're headed for the New South Wales South Coast, where we'll be fishing a small but very popular little waterway called Sussex Inlet. We've previously fished north of this system. We've fished south. We've fished to the west, particularly to the west. We've fished St. George's Basin a lot. But we haven't really talked about the connection between St. George's Basin and the coast. And that, for those who are not from that part of the world, is Sussex Inlet. Now, today we're going to be talking to Flathead enthusiast Nathan Bilsborough, who has fished that system with his grandfather, with his father, with his own son now. So generations of Bilsboroughs have been fishing Sussex Inlet for Flathead. Nathan's got it pretty well wide on the lures. So tons and tons of great tips to be picked up from today's interview. Now, folks, today's episode of the Australian Lure Fishing Podcast is brought to you by Jabbers Australia and by the Jabbers range of amazing fishing rods. And we're going to be talking about one of those rods in today's episode. Now, I've previously on the podcast talked about Jabbers Urban Beats Deft Flicker, which has become my steadfast favourite for flicking lures under mangroves or mangrove jack. We've talked about the Wanderlust, which is a fabulous little casting, jigging crossover rod that fills so many gaps and so many niches. Now we're going to be talking about a different rod again. I'm not going to tell you what that is, but another rod in the Jabbers range. If you haven't got your head around this line of rods, you really need to, because they are lightweight, they are sensitive, they are responsive, they are top quality rods. I absolutely love them. And here's the kicker, because you wouldn't know this. If somebody handed you a Jabbers rod and you went off and had a fish with it for a day and handed it back, you wouldn't know this without looking closely, but they are multi-piece rods. They are 5-piece travel rods that stow away in the smallest of spaces, come in a semi-hard case. Absolutely brilliant. Whether you're traveling or planning to travel, whether you're wanting to stow a bunch of them on your boat without them getting in the way, whether you want one under the seat of your car and the back of the ute, it really doesn't matter. What these rods bring to fishing is portability without compromising on the performance of the rod. And where I was once a 1- and 2-piece rod only, the Jabbers range have got me asking, why wouldn't I want a travel rod? Why wouldn't I want a 5-piece rod? It's got no disadvantages. All the advantages of a top quality rod, none of the disadvantages of the travel rods of old. I've been so impressed with the Jabbers rods that I've used that I'm telling everybody about it. Okay, I want ALF listeners to understand the value of these rods, the quality of these rods, and the performance is top notch. And thanks to Nathan and his partner in crime, Brad Inglis, who you heard on the podcast a few weeks ago, I can now offer these rods through the Team Doc Lures Tackle Collective, so ALF listeners can get a great deal on a rod and support the Australian Lure Fishing Podcast at the same time. So definitely go and check that out. Each of the rods that we've talked about on the podcast and that I've tried personally are available at great prices and with some really cool bonuses to boot over at team.doclures.com/jabbers. That's JABERS. So team.doclures.com/jabbers. I'll put a link in the show notes to this episode. It's episode 669, but definitely head over there and find out what all the excitement's about. So that's team.doclures.com/JABBERS, or just go to the website, doclures.com, type in Nathan, type in 669, the episode number, and go to the show notes, and there'll be a link right there that you can jump over and check those rods out. But now, folks, it is definitely time that we get Nathan on board and we start talking about fishing for Flathead in Sussex Inlet.
This is the Australian Lure Fishing Podcast, where our mission is to help everyday sports fishers experience extraordinary lure fishing. If next level fishing is your dream, then let us provide the tools and information that will bring that dream to life. Tune in as our expert hosts chat with Australia's best anglers and share their tips for success. Then check out our website. It's one of Australia's largest and most popular online fishing resources. But right now, settle in to listen as ALF founder Greg Doc Lures Vinall delivers today's episode through the nerdy lens of a scientist, lure maker, and sport fishing tragic.
Hey folks, what could be better than heading out to some beautiful, pristine little inlet somewhere with clear water, plenty of tidal flow, and some great croc flathead to target? Well, that's exactly what we're going to be doing in today's episode. We're headed for Sussex Inlet. If you don't know where that is, don't worry, we're going to explain it to you. And our guest today is Nathan Bilsborough. So Nathan, Bilsy, mate, welcome to the show.
G'day, Greg. How are you, mate? Thanks for having us.
Awesome to have you here, mate. Looking forward to a really good conversation. So, mate, Sussex Inlet, it's a place that you have fished for many years. Since you were a kid, basically, you were fishing that area with your father.
Mate. Yeah, no, I've been 41, unfortunately, getting old and achy. But no, mate, I've been down there with Dad for a lot of years, and I've seen a lot of changes in those years, and a lot of changes for the better.
Yep,
for sure.
Yeah, we often
it's
focus
a very
on
interesting fishery.
We often focus on the negatives of things moving forwards, don't we? But there's a lot of things that are actually a lot better these days in terms of how we manage these systems, how we manage our fisheries. Quite often, it's a lot better than what it was going back 20 years ago.
Yeah, no, look, I suppose I cut my teeth there with the old man drowning pilchards and catching a feed and going home sort of thing. But you'd go and, let's go throw some lures here. There's no fishing there. Sort of thing, but it's turned from that to, I guess the turning point was the fishing licence, really, and removing the commercial fisheries from the areas, including the basin. They didn't fish the inlet, but that basin feeds the inlet, and I've just seen it grow and grow in species and size and become the trophy flathead fishery that it is now.
Yeah. Yep. And folks, we probably weren't all that clear about where we're fishing. So obviously for those that know the area, they'll know exactly what we're talking about. For those who are a little less familiar, we have talked about fishing in this part of the world on a number of occasions. The basin that Nathan's talking about here is St George's Basin. So we're in the kind of St George's Basin, Jervis Bay sort of area. And Sussex Inlet is what connects St George's Basin to the ocean, right?
Yeah. So, it's basically... It's quite a small river mouth compared to the whole system upstream into the basin. It's not even that long a stretch, but it's a very healthy stretch of water. But yeah, it connects the ocean to St George's Basin. It's a very healthy system for sure.
About 6.2 kilometres, I think I estimated it at Sussex Inlet from the ocean, from the Barway up to St George's Basin. Now, St George's Basin, this is the thing that interests me, mate. I know we had a bit of a chat off air before we started this interview about tides and things, but I know St George's Basin doesn't have massive tidal movement, does it? But at the bottom end, there's quite reasonable tides. So there's something strange happening in that little inlet, mate.
It is, mate. If you look at your tidal charts and say there was a low at 3 o'clock, it's basically, it won't be low. You won't get that tidal change till about 6.
Yep. Because
the river mouth is so small, you can give or take 10 minutes either side of 3 hours of that tidal change.
Wow.
And it's taken me a few years to figure that out, actually, because I've always gone, all right, I've got to be out there on the tide change or whatever it might be, or I've got to get the last couple of hours of the run out. And yeah, mate, I've finally figured out the last couple of years that it's pretty well 3 hours on the dot till it goes slack.
And is it the same? Because I know, and I had a look at a system just the other day with our Team Doc Lures members and did a bit of a breakdown of the Brunswick Heads area. And I know that for that I had a look at the tide charts from Sydney and I corrected them for Brunswick Heads. But the tide was, I think from memory, don't quote me on this, but I think it was 30 minutes difference for the high tide, but it's 60 minutes difference for the low tide or something like that. Is that the same, or is it a consistent 3 hours different from the tide charts?
Well, I'm not going to say that I've been out there every single time for that change of tide, but yeah, I've consistently noted that it has been 3 hours. On the most, I do fish the run out a lot. I don't know a great deal whether the run in is different.
Okay,
but the run out definitely is consistently around the 3 hour different mark. Yeah.
And my suspicion, and I'm guessing here, and I'd love for anybody who knows this area to jump on the website and put a comment on the show notes to let us know what really goes on. But my suspicion is that there might be some difference in the high and low tides, because you've got that system, St George's Basin upstream. So
I wonder whether there can be contributing factors with high rainfall that we've had there for a lot of years, and that the fact that the basin it basically runs out on a full moon and it's out for 2 weeks and then runs in on no moon and it's in for 2 weeks. It's a very different system to fish and to, I wouldn't say perfect, because I don't think anyone's ever perfected that place.
Well, we all like a challenge, mate, so hopefully we're going to get a few tips from you about how we can go about it. But I guess before we move on, the other factor to consider there is that as far as I can tell anyway, the tide gauge, or the closest tide gauge to Sussex Inlet, is around in Jervis Bay. Now, Jervis Bay is open to the sea. It's a much bigger mouth. And so if you're just reading that tide chart, then you're likely, if you're just going straight off what's on the tide chart, you are likely to be out. I think it's 3 hours behind on the low. Now, when you go to the mouth, mate, if you're down around the barway there, is the tide different there to what it is up near the top of the system? You know, in terms of when you get your highs and lows, is there much difference in that?
Mate, I do fish the mouth from time to time. The bar system there is extremely dangerous.
Yes.
So I tend not to fish that area so much, although in saying that, I have caught some pretty cool flathead on very good weather days just outside the bar.
Yep.
But if you come just inside the bar, it might be a matter of 15 minutes roughly as to when it changes, but there's a small reef on the point there. Just when you come over the bar and you turn right, on your left-hand side, there's a small rocky bar, which is quite an interesting little spot, that.
Little shoal there. I've actually got Google Earth open as we speak, and I'm looking at that little shoal there right now, and that does look quite interesting.
Holds some pretty cool fish at different times of the year.
I would imagine so. All right, so look, we're going to get into talk. We probably jumped the gun a little bit and started talking about tides and all kinds of things. I guess the point I wanted to make here is if you're not familiar with this system, it's not one that you're just going to go to and start fishing straight away, particularly if you're thinking about crossing the barway. As Nathan said, it is a very dangerous bar. And if you go by what's on the tide charts, you might find yourself coming to grief. So you do need some local knowledge. There is a sea rescue, I think, at Sussex Inlet. Am I correct in saying that?
Yeah, there's a maritime rescue. They're probably a K up the river there. So yeah, Channel 16 as you go over the bar and check in.
Yeah.
And remember to check back out as you come back over the bar.
Of course. And what I was going to say is get some advice before you cross the bar, especially if you're new to the area. You don't go and talk to those guys. Yeah. There's a boat ramp right there, so make the decision to launch where the marine rescue is and go in, have a chat with them and get some advice before you attempt it. Anyway, you go.
You're right. No, I was going to say there's a good fishing club there too at the Sussex Inlet Bowling Club, and mate, they're the guys, they're the fellas that know the ins and outs of that bar. And if you want some really good info instead of talking to some bloke at the ramp that's maybe never been over it.
Yes, absolutely.
So the Sussex Inlet Fishing Club, they're really good fellas. They're very approachable.
Yep, good stuff. All right, so mate, we will get into talking about this system in just a moment. I have to say, just as we've been talking, scanning and scrolling through Google Earth and looking at that beautiful blue water and lots of structure and lots of channels and flats, it's going to be a great conversation. Before we do that, though, let's introduce you to our audience with a few getting to know you type questions, just to settle into the interview and help people to understand who you are and what you do and how long you've been doing this kind of stuff. So let's have a talk about, first of all, where you like to fish, mate, other than Sussex Inlet. Obviously, this is close to where you currently live, but if you're going somewhere else to fish for a bit, where would you head off to? What part of Australia is your sort of bucket list destination?
No, most guys, mate, I love the runoff up the territory. I really do. It's just untouched. I like to get out to those untouched sort of areas, and whether it be in a chopper or an airboat or something, just runoff barrowfish is just insane.
Yes.
And now, I don't have to catch the biggest. I just have a lot of fun doing it. But that's what I like doing. Other than this, definitely up there.
And I know you've spent a bit of time living and working up there. And what part of the top end have you done most of your fishing?
Mate, I've done a lot on the daily, Flora River around Catherine.
Yep.
And just in March last runoff, we did a lot up off the floodplains out of near Shady Camp, basically, out the back of there.
Yep.
Yeah, so that was really cool. Did a lot of chopper fishing and airboat fishing, and mate, it was trying out different lures and some different rods, and
sounds hard to take, mate.
Prototype testing, mate. It was awesome.
Well, we've got to do our prototype testing. Good stuff. Now, mate, is there a species? I know you've caught lots of different species, especially with the areas that you fish, but is there one species that you haven't managed to tick off your bucket list yet?
1 metre flathead.
1 metre flathead. Possibility in Sussex Inlet, because I suspect it might be. Yeah.
It definitely is, mate. I haven't done it. I haven't cracked it. I've got close, but no, I haven't cracked it. And there's guys that want to do the PNG black bass and all that sort of stuff, but Oh, I think the old unicorn, mate, the big old 1 metre dusky, that'd do me nicely.
How close have you come, mate? What's your PB?
92.
Yeah, yep.
92. Not heaps close, but it's up there.
It's definitely up there. That's a quality fish, no doubt about that. But it's not quite quality enough that you could just stretch it a centimetre or two and get it across the mark.
No, it wasn't, mate. I considered, but I couldn't pull it long enough.
You might actually be able to call it a metre flatty if you had one of those dodgy brag mats that some people use.
Yeah. Every big flathead looks like it's a metre till you get on the brag mat.
Yeah, that's
that
right.
big.
Very good.
No, that's it, mate. Nice and simple for me, but
yep.
Yeah, not too extravagant.
You got a piece of fishing tech or a fishing gadget that you rely on that you'd like to share with us?
Mate, for doing this sort of stuff, I think you have to have two. One's definitely electric motor.
Yep.
I don't know how I'd fish without the electric motor, and I used to. Yep. Many years ago, kick the motor into gear and move up a bit.
One of those things. Once you've got it, you can you become a complete Gumby, and you can't do without it.
No, you can't. I couldn't live without it. And mate, funnily enough, my tonics, they're very comfortable. I've had my spotters and my Makos and all that, but the tonics they're just nice, mate, and the glass is superior. It really is, and you can spot even these camo giants sitting in the sand. It's next level. What you can see.
Glad to hear that, mate. They're a good bit of kit at a really good price, and anyone who's been listening to the show for a while knows that they can get on board and get themselves a pair of tonics through our tackle collective at Team Dock Lures. So anyone can do that.
There you go.
You get to support the podcast, and you get the best pair of sunglasses on the market. So, what model are you wearing, mate, and what lens colour?
One of the Outbacks, mate. And I just run that blue mirror.
Yes.
Just to get that reflective surface, just cuts through that really shiny blue water nicely. Yep. Yeah, I love them.
And I'd imagine, look at the inlet. It's blue water, it's clear water, so I'd imagine they'd be just the thing.
It is.
And
most of the time, mate, yeah.
By the way, the Outback Blue Mirror, if I remember rightly, was also the Sunglass of the Year at the AFTA show last year, 2023. It's a good pair of sunnies.
Yeah, mate, they're sensational. They really are.
Excellent stuff. All right, let's move on, mate. Have a chat about who you'd like to spend some time fishing with. You got someone in mind that if you could just down tools right now and head off to Sussex Inlet and cast a few lures around that you'd like to spend some time fishing with and just having a bit of a chat and slinging banter and that kind of thing?
Oh, I get enough banter fishing with Brad, his business partner, so I don't need any of that, but it's always good fun. Mate, honestly, I love fishing with my young fella and my dad, and if I could have one other fella, it'd be my grandfather, who's probably the guy that really got us into the fishing scene. Yeah, he's long gone, but yeah, if I could get him back to, mate, it'd blow his mind.
Yeah.
What's about these days, and I've still got one of his old rods out there, and it was his favourite rod, and mate, you could compare it to a cooked piece of spaghetti. It's so flimsy, it would blow his mind.
I'm sure it would. You know, as you said at the start, you fished this area with your father and your grandfather, and you were soaking pilchards and that sort of thing. And I know that you don't bait fish anymore, mate. You are very much a lure fisher these days.
No, it's very funny. Like, Dad, I'll take him up to the base, and his whole thing, I've never caught a fish up there. There's no fish up there. But he grew up in the era where they were trawling the basin, and it's 40 square k of basin. It's not a massive fishery. It's big enough, but not big enough to be trawled.
Yep.
And since the time they used to go fishing up there to now, when they've removed the trawlers and commercial fishing, it's a totally different ball game.
Yeah. Yep.
And we go up there and I'll throw plastics, and I guess he's still very old school where he'll just bob the plastic, and I'm like, no, rip it up and
fish it. Yep.
and I don't know, I'll catch some and he'll, give me one of those ones. He still hasn't quite mastered it, but he's saying that there's definitely fish out there now, so that's a good thing. Mate, it is. That basin's an amazing fishery once you get your head around it and where to be at what time. Yeah, very cool.
Excellent. All All right, mate, tell us, before we get into the interview properly, tell us about your favourite memory of fishing Sussex Inlet and the fish you caught on that occasion, whether it's, there's a bit of giggling going on here. There's a funny story to come. But yeah, tell us your favourite story about fishing Sussex.
Well, that's that 92, funnily enough. I had a couple of fellas that working for me. We were having our Christmas party, and I took them out. We went outside fishing, and one of the boys got dead seasick, which I would call hungover. And I said, all right, we'll take you in, mate. So we took him in, and I said, right, there's a little cafe there. Run in, grab bacon and eggs, burgers, whatever he's eating. So he ran and did that, and me and the other fellow said, we better, while he's in there ordering those, we'll go for a quick flick over here. And, mate, we wouldn't have drifted 30 metres. And I was just flicking it was one of Crossies. It was a 5-inch, what colour was that? Butterscotch. Yeah, 5-inch butterscotch paddle tail, and just flicking it along and doing what you do, just lift, wind, lift, and then just went really heavy. And I was like, is that a bit of weed? And that said bit of weed started ripping a fair bit of line off. And yeah, mate, we had boats pulling up all around us, and felt like 4 hours. It was 15 or 20 minutes later. We netted it, and mate, it had a head the size of a square mouth shovel.
Wow.
But yeah, that's probably one of the ones I wasn't expecting.
Yes,
it definitely sticks in my memory. So yeah, it was a very cool fish.
That bacon and egg roll would have tasted so much better after catching that too.
Well, old mate had finished his by the time we got back. He said, it was good fun to watch, mate, from the bank. He felt a lot better anyway.
Yeah, excellent. All right, mate, let's have a serious chat about this system and how to go about catching fish. For those who haven't fished the system before, so tell us something over all the years you've been fishing it that you've learned about fishing Sussex. Other than the tide, you've already shared that, but something you've learned about fishing this system for trophy flathead that the average person might not realise.
Number one would have to be boat traffic.
Okay.
Holiday periods, all of that sort of stuff. 100% the fish shut down.
Yeah.
They get off the flats. They disappear. And I don't know where they go. They just disappear, and it's quite a narrow river. So when you've got 2 and 3 and 4 boats going either way all day, you can understand why the fish are just going, I'm out of here.
Yeah. Yep.
So number one, don't fish in holiday periods if you can. You'll definitely catch fish in holiday periods if you get up early or go out late. But yeah, if you want to do gentleman's hours, you definitely want to fish it out of holiday periods.
Sure.
The other big thing I have learnt in that system is birds.
Okay.
Doesn't matter if it's one pelican or just one tern or one seagull just swooping around. If you've got a bird around the edges, you will find baitfish and you'll find pretty good flathead.
Okay.
Yeah, that's a definite key. Yeah, and just the edges. Fish the flat. If you look on Google Earth, there's a lot of islands and a lot of shallow flats that it's just great fishing. When you get up on those flats and throw the right lures at the right time on the right tide, you'll amaze yourself with what you can catch.
Right. Well, that's what we want to know now, mate, is what lures, what times, what tides. Let's start with the tides. So you mentioned you like a run-out tide. Run us through.
I do, yeah. Big fan of a run-out tide. A lot of the edges of the inlet do have mangroves. So obviously that's harbouring a lot of baitfish, all that sort of stuff. I'm not so worried about some guys' last half hour of the run-out tide. I'll fish at any part of the run-out tide. It doesn't bother me. And even at that change to when it starts to come in, it's fine. So what I like to do is on the run-out tide, I'll start with going to the mouth of the river area.
Yep.
And I'll spot lock and fan cast, and then creep forward with the electric motor.
Yep.
And I'll spot lock and fan cast. So I've basically got my bait coming in the same direction that the water's flowing.
Okay. Yep.
Yeah, it's a pretty natural presentation, really.
Yep.
Because your bait's coming out of the mangroves off the flat. And you're targeting those sort of drain areas too. Like once the water runs off the sandbars and off the flats, they turn into drains and the bait's got nowhere to go. And it's pretty simple as to where these big flathead are going to be sitting.
Yeah. And if, as we are at the moment, if you jump onto Google Earth and you have a bit of a look at this system, it's a beautiful clear water system. You can see the sandy bottom all the way through, which allows you to be able to see where the deep parts are, where the shallow parts are. You can see exactly which way the water flows on an incoming tide or an outgoing tide, and you can figure out where those places are, where the fish are going to be able to sit out of the current, but they're still going to have water bringing bait towards them. And as you say, casting your lure up current, bringing it back down, it's a natural presentation because bait fish and prawns don't generally swim against a strong current for a start, but also it means that you're bringing your lure back towards the fish or across in front of the fish. And we know that flathead and like most species, they're going to sit there with their nose up into the current, right?
Yeah, mate. Yeah, so you put it in their face. And flathead always, well, in my experience, always sit with their nose pointing the way the water's coming from so that they can watch all that bait come towards them.
Yep.
Now, if I find, say, you've got a drain, don't always cast directly at that drain.
Okay.
So I'll cast around it first.
Yes.
And try and not spook the bait fish that are coming off that drain system. I try and do the outskirts first and then gradually throw your lures towards the middle of that drain and then concentrate it in the middle of it.
Yeah.
So you're not just throwing it in the middle of the water running out and then spooking everything.
Yep.
So you do the outskirts, if that makes sense.
Yeah, so throw in some short casts and fan them out, and then the next run cast a little bit longer and fan them across again so that you're methodically covering all the water without spooking anything.
Well, yeah, absolutely, and cover the area. Like they would do like the drift with the current, but I feel like you're pulling the lure in the wrong direction.
Yeah.
But you also, I've done it plenty of times, drifted with the current, but I've found that drifting too fast, because that system's such a small mouth, you get quite a lot of current. You don't have the time to fan cast.
Yes. Yep.
And cover the whole area. So I found that we were spooking way too many fish because we hadn't actually got that lure over the head yet.
Yep. Okay.
So by going the other way and presenting the lure in the same direction as the bait fish, and you've got all the time in the world because you're spot locked there and you can just sit there and flick to your heart's content.
Yep. And then, as you say, jog the electric and you move yourself forward 10 metres or 15 metres or whatever and start again.
Yep, correct, yeah. And it doesn't have to be, like you might be able to cast 20, 30, 40, 50 metres, whatever it may be. You don't have to jog your motor forward 50 metres if you're casting 50 metres.
Yes, yep.
If you, like I said, just jog 10 or 20 and recover some of those spots you've already covered, because some of those fish will sit there and they'll look at it but not be quite convinced, which comes into a bit of tactic too. I've chained up some tactics and it worked quite well.
Yep. And these fish will move as well, of course, covering the area methodically and putting several casts over each spot. You're going to pick up some of those fish that are moving around, positioning themselves for where a feed's going to come. Yeah, so
Flathead, their name explains it perfectly. Their eyes are on top of their head, and I generally use surface lures for these bigger girls. And if you could imagine your eyes on top of your head and then opening your mouth as wide as you can't see much. So they do tend to try and position themselves, from what we've noticed, not behind the lure, but they'll come around to the side of it. So they get the bigger picture of that lure. So they're getting a whole picture, and it's giving them more of a chance that being a surface lure, that when they come up and open their mouth and they can't see it, it's their best bet.
Yep.
Yeah.
I agree. And it's also, they're perfectly adapted for that because they've got that big bucket mouth as well. So they're taking a fair bit of water as well. So the fact that they can't see doesn't matter quite so much if they're sucking in large volumes of water close enough is good enough. Oh, yeah, that's right. And they can inhale a lot when you hear it and you're not really concentrating and you pause that lure a metre from your boat. It'll, heart transplant kind of stuff. What a way to go, though. All right, so we've talked about tides. We've talked about general strategy in terms of casting, working your lures. Time of day, obviously the tide's going to be the primary factor. What about time of day though? Is that important? And time of year? What months are best for the?
Look, yeah, late spring. I reckon they start to spawn. I reckon there's potentially two spawning periods, mostly up in the basin, I would say. But yeah, late spring. But coming through into your November time, December, before all that traffic is quite good fun.
Yep.
Mornings and afternoons.
Okay.
For sure.
So run out tide first early morning, run out tide late in the afternoon.
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah, I do love run out tide, and definitely if you can get those surface lures or any lure moving around at that first period of light, it's quite active. Yep. And then even coming into those late afternoons and when you've got a no moon period, when the prawns start to run, it can be very successful too. It can be it's a lot of fun.
Yep.
Have a late arvo on a no moon. Yeah.
Yep. A lot of people don't realise if you're in the area and you know the area well enough that flathead will bite quite well after dark too.
Absolutely. Yeah. No doubt. If you can get a bit of splash and a bit of commotion, mate, they're pretty tuned in. They're not a dumb animal, that's for sure.
They're not. Now, mate, just looking, and I want to move on in a moment and just talk about tackle, but before we do that, just looking as I am at Google Earth, and I can see all these flats and I can see all these channels and I know where I would probably target focus my attention if I was fishing the system for the first time. But what advice do you have about what makes a good flat for flathead? What should people be looking for in terms of the structure and water depth and that kind of stuff?
Yeah. So I personally like patchy weed.
Okay.
Not too dense. I like it to be quite sparse, really. But I will flick up. I've many a time landed especially my surface lures on the bank.
Yep.
And started from there.
Yep.
And a lot of times have pulled fish from half a metre off the bank. It's a very funny concept. The guy that fishes from the shore casts his lure as fast or his bait as far as he can out, and then the guy that's fishing from the boat casts as close as he can to the shore. But I really look for, I guess, a choke point of where bait has to funnel around a point, but they've got that sparse sort of weed to harbour in at the same time and hide whilst they're doing so.
Yep.
That patchy weed gives you the opportunity to use not only soft plastics off the bottom, but surface lures, depending on the depth. So you've got a fair range of what you can do in that particular area, but it gives everything camouflage. Gives the flathead camouflage, gives the bait camouflage. So patchy weed is something I look for straight away.
Yep. And fish that's feeling camouflaged and secure and not easily seen, it's always going to be more aggressive and more relaxed and more likely to take a lure as well.
Heaps happier, mate. Yeah. There are sand flats there that I've fished. I find they're more reluctant to actually strike, and if they do and miss, I feel like they don't often come back for a second go.
Okay.
Whereas in that patchy cover, like the weedy areas, they're more inclined to have a few cracks, and they run back to their hole and they'll sort of crocodile in behind it and come around again. And it's funny how much confidence that little bit of cover can give a flathead. So
absolutely,
definitely a patchy weed area. If you can get a patchy weedy area coming off mangroves, it's quite ideal, really.
Yeah, no shortage of those in the inlet by the looks of it either. Now, mate, it looks like there might be plenty of shore-based options as well, and certainly kayak-based options for those who don't have a boat.
Mate, there's heaps. Yep. A lot of your shore-based options come around towards all the inlets. You can walk around a lot of that.
Yeah.
And then if you want to get more adventurous, you can head out into the basin, which has got a lot of great shore-based options. You got to walk, but sometimes you got to walk to get your prize. A bit more effort.
Yep.
Bit bigger prize. So it's shore-based is definitely a big thing, mate. There's a lot of yaks there all the time.
Yep.
I just wish they'd have, I don't know, fluoro orange or yellow or something instead of just so you could see them a little better.
Yep.
Yeah, no, they're definitely everywhere, but there's a lot of shore-based opportunities and some great fish too.
Yep. All right, mate, let's walk through tackle, because I know a lot of people are probably sitting there going, okay, this is all good. I know where to fish. I know when to fish. Got a pretty good idea of some of the techniques I need to use, but what rod, reel, line, leader should I take? And I reckon, mate, you're probably going to have a couple here that you want to throw out.
Yeah, well, you're not going to be able to limit me to one rod.
That's right. We're happy with a couple. So.
I guess the flathead fishing, the whole flathead fishing industry has really changed a lot in the last 10, 15 years. It's become a very big target. And the change of that has changed a lot of rods and tackle. My go-to 110% is the first lure I throw. It doesn't matter what time of day, when or where. It's the 195 Crossfire.
Yep.
But in the early days, trying to find the rod to throw that was a pretty beefy. It's 50 grams, 49 grams, whatever it is.
Yep.
Trying to find a rod that would throw that was a bit of a task. But I also feel like sometimes people look at me and go, what's this bloke doing? He's not fishing for GTs. And mate, I throw the 195 probably 80% of the time when I'm fishing for big old girl flathead.
Yep.
Throw that on the Javas Snake Charmer double tap.
Yep.
It's a 5-piece rod. It's all very super high quality, Toro carbon and 2D components. But the beauty of that rod is that it's got two different tips. One is, it's called the absorber, and one's the skull dragger. It's cool names.
Yes.
So I can use both of those both of those tips, one being whether it be for big swim bait that are quite heavy, I'll use the skull dragger. It's a bit stiffer tip. And if I'm throwing something a bit lighter or get me a bit more distance, I'll throw the absorber tip on.
Okay.
So
cool.
I throw, and it's quite a heavy rod. It's a PE4, but mate, when it comes to these sort of fish, real estate between you and that lure is paramount.
Yep.
So the further you can cast the lure, the better it is.
Yep. What's the length of the Snake Charmer double tap?
It's a 7'2".
Yep.
Yeah, it's 7'2" rod. It's 20 to 40 pound P4.
Yep.
So 9 to 20 kilo. But that allows me to throw. Mate, I've thrown the big Barra double clutches with it, and some quite like 28 gram Air Honcho pencil. We throw that, no worries with it, and it sends them a long way.
Yep.
But I can throw, 100, 150 gram lures with it, not a problem. It is only rated to 70 grams, but any decent fisher knows his limits. I do push them to their limit. But I throw the Zerek at Affinity with it. I think that's around the 100 gram mark.
Yep.
It's no dramas at all. So it gives you that really good range, especially with those two tips.
Yep.
It's just a great all round rod for that sort of stuff.
Cool. I mean, it used to be, I think back in the day when I was a youngster and you were choosing a rod to fish with, you'd try and get a rod that was going to handle the fish that you were going to be targeting. So the question was always, is that going to handle a barra? And these days, the rods will handle the fish, no worries. These days, with these sort of higher caliber rods, it's more about will the rod handle the casting weights and will it allow you to work 100%. The lure correctly? And that's where, especially when you're casting those big swim baits and top lures, as you say, 100 grams, 4 ounce, that's a fair chunk of weight. I used to use 4 ounce sinkers in the surf when I was a kid.
That's right, mate.
To sling pillies out.
You're 100% right.
Yeah. So it's all changed over the last 10 years or so. And these Jabbers rods, they're a high quality, they're a graphite rod, so super sensitive, fast action, fire the lure out, and I'd imagine feel every bump and every twitch along the way back.
Yeah, mate, you can feel hooks pull on fish. Yep. It's bizarre. I used to use solely Shimano gear, but got coaxed around by Brad Inglis, and I kept saying, "No, I'm not going to use them. I don't need them." And long story short, it turned out that taking my father out and my young bloke out on the boat, they were breaking a lot of my rods because we had too many rods for too many circumstances on the boat. Cruising up the inlet and then going outside, snapper fishing, kingfish, and whatever it might be, and then they were tripping over and breaking stuff. And I thought, well, if these rods are any good, and I can pack them up when I'm done with them, put them under the cast deck, happy days. And I've never used another rod since.
Yep. Yep. Full disclosure, you and Brad are bringing these rods into the country. And this is actually, it's a fun episode because we've just recently had Brad on the show and we talked about some of the Jabbers rods that he's using. The one last was one that he's using. This is a cool conversation for me because we're talking now about the Crossfire lure, and it was actually Simon Cross that put me onto you guys and said, you want to talk to these guys at Jabbers? So it's a nice little circle there. Thank you, Crossy, for that connection.
Yeah, so, I owe him a carton of beer, I think.
Yeah, that's right. I owe him a carton of beer too.
I think he reckons about 7.
Yeah, it might be worth that as well. Who knows? But so it's a nice little circle there. But I've started using the Jabbers rods myself, and so I haven't used the Snake Charmer double tap, so I'm quite interested to hear how you're using it and what you're using it for. But certainly the ones that I've been using for the types of fishing that I do are absolutely brilliant. And like you say, they're a 5-piece rod, which means you've got all that flexibility of a travel rod, but you can sling them under the deck and stow them away and all that sort of thing. But if you don't need a travel rod, well, that's fine. Just leave them in the rod rack in one piece, because they're every bit as good as any other rod you'll ever use, and better than a lot of them.
We wouldn't have started the company we've started if we didn't think they were any good. So, mate, we don't call them a travel rod. They're just a convenient rod that packs up.
Yeah,
simple as that, and they're bloody high quality, super high quality. So there's no doubt about that.
But having said that, high quality, but the price tag is quite reasonable, right? So they're certainly not a budget rod.
No, they're not a budget
for
rod.
What you're getting, the value is pretty good. You're not paying a huge price ticket for the quality of rod that you're getting. Definitely worth going and checking out. Yeah. And the other cool things. Sorry, you go.
Yeah, I was going to say the other bonus with that is some fellas that go out and buy a $600 rod, whatever it might be, big swim bait rod or whatever, and I've seen it. We've all seen it. You jam them in the door or in a window and tailgate your car.
You're bringing tears to my eyes. I've got ceiling fans in the back of my mind at the moment. Yeah.
Well, don't worry, so that we look after has done that. I won't mention names, but he knows who he is.
Yeah.
The beauty is, mate, that we replace every section. So if you do jam in a ceiling fan or wherever, what doesn't matter, if you break a section of this rod, even down to losing a reel hood, we can replace it. So, awesome. It's got spare parts and stuff. Mate, they're a great rod, and we love them.
And I'm just thinking, mate, and correct me if I'm wrong, but I know we have a lot of fishing guides that listen to the show. And I know a lot of the guides that I fish with have got 2 sets of tackle because they've got experienced anglers that come on board and they want to give them the good stuff, but they have a lot of less experienced anglers as well. But this is perfect, isn't it? Because you can put a decent rod in the hands of somebody who's less experienced and not be worried that you've got to replace it for $600 or $700 because you can just replace a tip or a butt section or whatever gets broken if that happens.
We've got 2 awesome outfitters up the territory that solely run our gear, barefoot fishing safaris and tight line fishing safaris.
Yep.
And mate, they can't speak highly enough of them. And one of the guys rang me the other day and he goes, mate, I need this, this and this. I'm like, what happened? He goes, oh, that guy cast a jig head through the tip of that one and that one fell over and trod on that one. And I'm like, oh, you're not up for a whole new rod, are you?
No, that's it, yeah.
So it's a win. But super high quality. They do catch more fish because you can feel everything. Yeah. But that's not the only rod that I use out there.
Hang on, and I do want to talk to you about the other rod too. So we're talking at the moment about fishing those bigger lures, so the big paddle tails, the swim baits, the big surface stick baits, that sort of stuff, the bents. What are you putting on those rods in terms of reels, lines and leaders, mate?
So that one, the double tap on the front of the Shimano, I reckon the kids could cast it.
Yeah, they could. I've got several of them. They're great.
Yeah, the digital control, mate, it's unbelievable. And, you know, at the end of the day, when you're a bit tired, you're not concentrating and whatever, it can really ruin the end of your days if you're using a conventional bait caster. So, yeah, the old DC, mate, she's a ripper reel. I love them.
Yeah, they're great.
And I'm running on that for all my swim baiting and crossfiring, my bigger lures, just 20-pound main, 20-pound leader.
Okay.
Yeah, fluorocarbon for all of it.
Any preference on the braid, mate?
Really, J braid's pretty good.
Yep.
I have gone to a bit weird, but the OSHA braid, it's really thin. The Shimano OSHA is really thin. So if you're using, say, a swim bait and you've got a lot of current, I find it doesn't drag your swim bait to the side a lot or as much. So, yeah, that J braid for the poundies, it's quite thin.
Okay, cool.
I was running J braid, but I've switched over that.
Yeah, well, the Ocean Jigger braid is specifically designed for jigging, and it's specifically designed to be as thin as possible for its strength, because you need to be able to get down vertically in a bit of current. So I'd imagine, I can understand why it's perfect for what you do.
Yeah, so I feel like you're getting a bit more cast distance with it, and just because it's jigging braid doesn't mean you can't
use it for other things. Yeah. So it casts okay. Yeah. I haven't used it.
It does,
okay.
No dramas with it at all. So,
excellent. All right. Yeah. Cool. All right. Excuse me a sec. All right. So let's move on and talk about this second outfit that you take, which presumably is going to be used for smaller, lighter lures and things.
Yeah. So double tap aside, I run the Jabbers fin raiser. It's a 7'6", 5 to 28 gram lure range, PU 1.5.
Yep.
So it's got it's hard to explain. It's a really nice whippy tip with a good, strong backbone down towards the butt action. This rod I use for whiting. Like I use it for popping for whiting, all the way up to throwing 6-inch, 7-inch soft plastics for snapper.
Right. Yep.
And then I might be running 20-pound, 30-pound leader for snapper, and then I'll go and change it over and just unhitch the snapper plastic and put a squid jig on.
Yep.
And I'll go squidding with it. It's such a great all-rounder, super sensitive. But that 7'6" just gives me a lot of distance casting. Yep. Again, real estate between you and the lure is paramount with these fish. Small waterway, fair bit of pressure or a fair bit of boat noise. They do bunker down fairly hard. Sometimes it can take a bit of coaxing them out, and sometimes it just, I don't know, you just got to use some weird lures to get them out, but... Yeah.
when that's going on, the further you can get the lure from yourself and your boat, the better your chances. If the fish are a bit sketchy and they're a bit gun shy, you're fishing. Well, what we used to say, fine and far off was the fly fishing term. Fine line and cast the lure as far as you can.
Well, it makes sense, right? They're not concentrating on the boat; they're concentrating on what should be swimming past, what can they eat. Yeah, get the lure as far away as you can. So that 7'6" rod, it's delicate enough to cast quite a light lure and strong enough to battle a lot of big fish.
Okay.
Sure.
Sorry, what was the name of the rod again?
It's the fin raiser, the Jabbers fin raiser.
Yeah.
So it's another 5-piece rod, but it's main part of my arsenal for sure.
Yep. Now that one's available in spin and bait cast as well, isn't it? So
just spin at the moment, mate. Yeah, we are working on a bait cast model. Yep. Yeah, and that double tap is also only available in bait cast. But prior to that, I used to use the beast flogger, which we do have in spin and bait cast, which is also 7'2", a slightly lighter model. But I went to the double tap because it's got those two tips, so it just gives me that bit of flexibility.
Yeah, yep. Okay, cool. And what reel are you putting on the fin raiser, mate, and what line and leader?
Just a 2.5 and 6 to 8 pound main line and 12-pound leader.
Okay.
Just the OSHA leader. It's just fluorocarbon again. It's just really good abrasion resistance. It's pretty tough stuff. So.
Yep. Cool. Yeah. And tell us about the lures that you're casting with that.
So I run like 5-inch plastics. I do like Crossfire plastics. The paddle tails, the 5-inch paddle tails, and the Zerek Fishtraps.
Okay.
Are a bit of in the deeper water. So sort of fish trap once you get out into the basin, into the deeper water.
Yep.
So just 95 fish trap and 5-inch paddle tail. I'm a massive paddle tail fan when it comes to Flathead.
Yeah. Yep. Or just about anything.
Like jerk sheds.
And what are you rigging your soft plastics on, mate, in terms of jig heads and hooks and that sort of stuff?
Depending, obviously, in the inlet on the current, anything from 1/4 ounce to 3/4 ounce. We use the Jabbers mandrel data jig heads. So they've got a super awesome keeper on them. So when I do go outside fishing for snapper, I guess some of the other models and brands of jig heads, their keepers, the Z-Man slide off them a lot. Super glue is illegal on my boat. not allowed to have it. It's not coming on. But these keepers, it's a grass spike keeper. If you look them up, nothing slides off them.
Right.
They're bloody awesome. And they're a 5X rated jig head, so I think it's the only rated jig head on the market, so nothing's straightening it. They're very strong jig head, very pointy, very sticky.
Okay.
But sometimes, depending on where you're at, what the bait's doing, what the fish are doing, I've been known to go right down. There's just a competition I'm thinking of. There was some shrimp skipping across the surface, and my mate had all but given up. And I changed to a 1/16 1/0 jig head on a 1-inch squidgy prawn and threw it out. And second it hit the bottom, it was straight onto a 60-something model.
Yep.
Yeah. Elephants eat peanuts, mate.
They do. They absolutely do. That holds true for so many species in so many waters.
Got to be aware of your surroundings and the bait, and just always be looking.
Yep.
Always be looking, for sure.
Okay, cool. All right, mates. I think, we've been through where to fish, when to fish. We've talked about various strategies. We've talked about tackle. We've gone through a bunch of lures. I guess I'd like to, before we start to wrap things up a little bit, get a bit more advice on the surface lure fishing. So the Crossfire 195, which is your preferred weapon. I'd like to talk about where to fish it, when to fish it. I think you said you can fish any time of the day or night. Is that right? So it's just you'd use it anywhere?
Yeah, absolutely.
Yep.
It's a very versatile lure, and we've been playing around with some retrieval techniques and different rigging techniques, leader length, what we're hanging off the front of them. So basically, if we're fishing a flat up the inlet that's 6 inches deep, 8 inches down into a metre, basically we're running a rod, 2 rod lengths of leader, and I just run a quickie snap.
Yep.
So I can change colours at all times as quick as I like. So I'm not retying knots and all that sort of stuff. But if I want to get out into an area that, if they're not hitting the lure on those flats and they've gone a bit deeper, which I find sometimes in the hotter weather, they get off the flats and they go deeper into a bit cooler water. I've tried throwing on about 4, 5, 6 metres of leader. And what we do is put a swivel with a split ring to the front of that Crossfire, and even to the point where we've changed them out to wear uppercut trebles, which are slightly heavier trebles.
Yep.
So the rate of rise is marginally smaller.
Yes.
When they lift up through the water column. But by using that longer fluorocarbon leader with a swivel, a split ring hanging off the face of it, and those heavier trebles, we can get them a hell of a lot deeper.
Okay.
So, yes, they're a surface lure, but the erratic action that you impart on that lure, it just gets them so aroused and they just can't not eat it.
So
but the other thing is...
So working these lures, is it? I've this picture in my mind of it's a bit like fishing a stick bait for GTs. Those kind of big, reasonably aggressive rod sweeps, and then a pause in between. Is that how you're working the Crossfire 195s?
So what we do is I like to get up on the gunnel of the boat because I'm using a 7'2" rod, so it's quite long. Yep. And if you can imagine casting out, and I've got that rod at say 2 o'clock.
Yep.
And I'll just twitch down to 5 o'clock, twitch, and then let it rise. And if I can't get a take on that, what we do, and this comes back to thinking about the Flathead Classic, right? How many Flathead Classics have been won by guys trolling lures? So you can throw a lure in front of a flathead 100,000 times and you can pop it and pause it, and they won't eat it. But when they think about this thing that just keeps going past their face and it's not stopping, and they go, I've got to get that.
Yeah.
Because it's intriguing to me that everyone says you've got to pause a lure to catch a flathead, but these trolling guys are killing it.
Yep.
Why don't we go halfway between?
Yep.
What we started doing was just, instead of going twitch, twitch, pause, and letting that thing float the surface, and don't get me wrong, they'll eat it, and you can let that thing pause for 30 seconds, a minute, have a beer. Who cares?
Yep.
They'll come up and eat it.
Yep.
But when they're not doing that, keep casting back at the same spot and just crank it.
Yep.
And the more you crank that thing with that long leader and those heavier hooks or whatever, the deeper it'll go. And the more these fish go, oh, that's getting away from me.
Yep.
I better get that. So it actually, I don't know what it is. It's just like, it's a desperation eat. They're just, I've got to get this. And it's changed the way I fish crossfires a bit. And I was fishing with Matt Boycett. He won the ALF. Well, not ALF. What was it? The same Flathead fishing comp. Anyway,
I'm not
he
sure
won that. I can't think of it. Sorry. He's been in the top 5 or 10 every year, and he took it out last year. But I had a few fishes with him, and he's of the same mindset. So, it's a desperation eat. They've got to catch up to that and get it before it's gone.
Yeah, and I wonder, you mentioned you can get it down a bit deeper with it rigged like that and fishing it in that way as well. And if you think about if you're in slightly deeper water and they're not particularly enthusiastic about feeding and they've got to come all the way up to the surface to hit something, maybe they get a bit lazy. But if it's swimming down that bit deeper and if you're on a constant retrieve and not giving it the opportunity to float up between pauses, then it's going to get down deeper and stay down deeper. Then that lure's really buzzing. It's like a mosquito buzzing around their heads, right? You might be getting that reaction bite as much as you're getting a hunger bite. So that may be part of it too.
Yeah, like Murray cod. Or if you know they're there, just annoy them until they go, bugger off, mate.
Yeah, that's
just
right.
Eat it because get out of my hand.
Yep.
Get out of my house.
Yep.
But, I find the hookup rate a little bit better too because it's not that open mouth on the surface because they're hitting it under the water. So they've got a bit more accuracy. But it's a little secret we found.
There you go.
But
Great
just
tip.
crank it all the way home. And when I mean all the way home, till you've got an inch of line hanging off the rod tip because you'll be surprised how many times they'll hit it at the boat. You're looking out or whatever. I've said to Crossy, when I need a heart transplant, he's paying for it.
Very good, very good. All right. Hey, Billsy, this has been a fantastic conversation, but I am going to start to bring it to a close now. I'm going to ask you one final question, and I'm just going to remind the folks at home that there are some show notes for this episode over at doclures.com. So you can just zap over there, type Nathan into the search bar, and that'll bring up the show notes for this episode. There's probably a couple of Nathans that I've interviewed over the years, but you'll definitely find it that way. And, of course, in those show notes will be an MP3 you can download, a PDF you can download. I'll make sure we've got links to Jabbers Australia as well. And I'll have links in there to Crossfire Lures. That's crossfirelures.com.au, I think. But there'll definitely be a link on those show notes. So definitely go over and check all that out. Get all the goodies. There's tackle cheat sheets and all sorts of things for Flathead there you can get to. Make sure you do that. Nathan, we are going to finish off now by just talking about those quiet days when we know we're in the right place because we've caught Flathead there before and there's not too many places, let's face it, in the inlet, unless they go up into the basin. There's not too many places for them to go, so we can probably pin down where they're going to be, but despite that, there's always those days where things just don't go to plan, the fish are not playing ball. Mate, leave us with a few pearls of wisdom about what to do on those tough days when the fish aren't really biting.
Well, my number one is choke points. Wherever the bait has to go, the fish are going to be. So concentrate on that and persist. But the other big thing is go when you couldn't be bothered. When it's super early or super late in the arvo, when you really want to sit back and have a beer around the fire, that's what everyone else is doing.
Yep.
Get on the water and find them because that's when they'll become, especially in those holiday periods, that's when they'll be chewing because they've had a whole day of hiding. Yeah.
Got to eat sometime.
Get out there when, that's right, get out there when no one else is out there. But constant, just be visual.
Good stuff.
Find your bait, find your fish, and the less people on the water, the better.
Yep.
For sure.
Yep. Absolutely. Stealth is king. Billsy, it's been fantastic talking to you. Thanks so much for coming along and sharing your knowledge and your wisdom with ALF listeners. Folks at home, as you've heard, Billsy and his offsider Brad are bringing some amazing tackling to Australia, so go and check that out at jabbersaustralia.com.au. Or for those that want to support the Australian Lure Fishing Podcast, you'll find that I've also got the Jabbers gear starting to turn up in the Team Doc Lures Tackle Collective as well. So you can come along and purchase some gear through me if you want to do that, and I'd be very happy to help you out. But Billsy, I think it's time for us to call it quits, mate. It might be beer o'clock.
Good on you, mate. Sounds like a good plan.
Terrific. Good on you. Stay safe, mate. We will talk to you again soon.
Cheers, Greg. Thanks, mate.
Thanks for listening to the Australian Lure Fishing Podcast. For free show notes, downloads, tools and resources, please visit our website on doclures.com or consider supporting the show by joining Team Doc Lures to receive exclusive members-only episodes, tools and resources. But for now, tight lines and may the fish be with you.